what do the names look like at the top of the candidates list?
Mike Elko,
right?
Urban Meyer,
Right. Urban Meyer,
Jim Harbaugh,
Ryan
James
Day,
Franklin, Mike Norvell, Ryan Day. No, I that's the thing. Are they going to go after another huge name, or are they going to go after somebody who could build a program? I think that's, if you're going Elko, that's kind of what you're looking for. Somebody who's familiar with the lay of the land and you kind of trust to get things in order and get things heading in a good direction. I think Dan Lanning is a name that makes a lot of sense if you're looking for somebody who has both the recruiting chops and the SEC experience, as somebody who, won national titles at Georgia and has done a very good job at Oregon. Would he leave Oregon for this job? I don't know. I know Thamel. The funniest option to me is Thamel reported Florida State's Mike Norvell as an option.
You can't go back to Florida State.
It would be hilarious if A&M gets Jimbo from Florida State. That doesn't work out, and they're like, let's go back to Tallahassee and get their coach now. So, yeah, it's an attractive job because it's got a ton of money. I just don't know who they're going to be able to pry away. Like, when you look at the names that kind of money attracts, most of them are already in pretty good spots. So are they going to use Texas A&M for a raise, or are they going to actually be interested in going to Texas A&M?
Right. I think Tom nailed it there. All those guys are probably candidates. It's going to be a job that's going to attract a ton of interest because it's going to make you unbelievably wealthy. And if you're taking this A&M job, you're probably asking for like 15 million. Assuming you're like a big time name. Now Elko's not, but like they do know him, so they should make a good choice on him. Like, if the guy's worked for you, you should have a pretty good eval of what he was when he was inside of your building. I mean, Norvell's from Texas, obviously has it rolling in Tallahassee right now. Like, again, like I mentioned, do you want to deal with all that, right? Pet the dog, do the chant, stand on one leg, spin around, wear the golden boots. They're putting a trophy in the lobby with a blank plate for when you're going to win your national championship. Maybe that'll go on eBay, by the way. That's anyway. Like, there's a lot of nonsense you got to deal with there. That's not related to winning on the field. To the names that Tom threw out, I think you do need somebody who's competent, who knows how to run an organization. Like, I would seriously take a look at Mark Stoops. Like, the guy has maximized Kentucky. Extremely consistent coach. He is a good recruiter. Kentucky's only going to get worse from now because of the SEC expanding. Like, you're going to be adding another half loss or so per year, and you have to play more good teams from the West. Now's a great time to get out if you're Mark Stoops, especially if Iowa doesn't open. I think Mark Stoops would win 10+ ball games at A&M.
Whoa.
More often than not. Like, he's a really good coach. He's a good manager of people. They recruit really well for what it is. Like, he's the best coach in Kentucky history. Well, since what, like the last half century? I think it'd be a good name. Obviously, Jeff Traylor, I think at UTSA, if you want a guy who you know of, who's local, like, really good job in the state of Texas, and a pretty nice track record at UTSA, by the way, like, does a really good job, a good coach. So, I mean, he would be somebody. Do you call James Franklin? They're calling me a clown for this Mark Stoops stuff. When Mark Stoops leaves Kentucky, watch. I'm going to look so smart because they're going to go back to having losing records more often than not, unless they keep up the terrible non-conference scheduling. I think Stoops is a good coach, man.
I do too. I just think you're talking about, like, I can't copy and paste Stoops to Texas A&M and expect that it's going to be, 10 wins a season. And I understand that you're giving Stoops more resources. You're giving Stoops like a better recruiting base. I think that the things that Mark Stoops does well is that high floor proposition. Like, if you are Texas A&M and you hire Mark Stoops, that's probably a pretty sane hire, which is why I don't think it will happen. Right? It is probably a very sane, safe hire. It is the item on the menu that is not going to steer you wrong. Very high floor, rock solid. But I do think that my analysis would be that the hire of Mark Stoops would be not going for the unknown of Dan Lanning. What could Dan Lanning do if we just gave him the whole war chest and just let this guy go eat. Jeff Traylor is probably not the rock star. Like Jeff Traylor is a little bit more of the unknown ceiling, where you lean on his local ties. You see the success that he's had at UTSA. He's not going to be – actually, I'll tell you what. I'll take that back. He sure as hell is going to win the press conference. That guy's got charisma overflowing. But, you're hiring – Texas A&M hiring UTSA's coach is one of those things that when you write it out as a headline, it doesn't have that same quality of we just went to Florida State and got the guy who won a natty. Mike Elko, as you mentioned, is definitely the play where you were just trying to solidify the culture, because you look at what he was able to do with a Duke team that had checked out on a Hall of Fame caliber coach in David Cutcliffe. And he gets in there and his coaching staff, they get those guys laser focused. 9 wins last year, tough as hell team to beat here in 2023 as well. I like to group these candidates based on what your expectations are and what they could deliver. And Lanning's in the rock star category, where we buckle up oh man, this could be the special one. Traylor is your local flavor, potentially with a high ceiling. And then Elko, while he was there, being a Northeastern guy, that just be more Brian Kelly. He's just following the Brian Kelly path from the Northeast into the Southeastern Conference to bring his own. So I like taking the candidates and trying to imagine what the different path would be in terms of trying to sell it to your fans and in terms of setting the expectations for what it's going to look like.
How good would Lane Kiffin look in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat?
I saw somebody in the tailgate say Lane Kiffin and Connor Wegman. Just imagine it. He steps in and all of a sudden the offense gets going.
He would score there. Is Lane a serious coach? To me, he's a perfect fit for Ole Miss, right? But the work you have to put in recruiting at A&M is a lot more than it is at Ole Miss. I think you can live a certain relaxed. You can enjoy life a little more, I think, at Ole Miss than you can at College Station. There are actual expectations at College Station where I don't think Ole Miss has real expectations. And I apologize to Ole Miss fans, but I guarantee you there's other coaches who agree with me on that. Also, do you land it faking it? Because I guarantee you none of these coaches give a damn about these A&M traditions, but the boosters are going to expect you to fake it. And I covered Jimbo for about a decade. I watched him try to fake some of that stuff when he got there. It's oh, this is going to be weird. I think Lane would be the hilarity of Lane trying to pretend to care about some of all these traditions that you have to board with at A&M because they're paying you that much money. I'm so here for that. I would laugh so hard.
The reason why Lane doesn't
Midnight Yell seriously.
Well, all right. So you say, is Lane a serious coach? I think that Lane just doesn't. I think Lane doesn't take himself too seriously because he's been in this for 23 years.
He's also been fired on a tarmac, so it's it's when that kind of stuff happens, it's hard to be yeah, no, I'm going to really, really kill myself for this.
Yeah, I think that he's just so seasoned and worn and calloused from this business that's why you see him, sort of bringing that vibe that makes it look like he's not. I think he's very serious. I think he enjoys coaching football. I think that he really does enjoy being a college football coach. He doesn't have to do it, and yet he's still, staying in the business. So I think that he is. If you think he's not serious, I think that just comes from him being weathered more than anything else. But I would not, if I was Texas A&M, I would not hire Lane Kiffin.
Okay, so instead of thinking of names,
yeah,
what does it take to win at Texas A&M? What do they need to look for as far as a candidate? Is recruiting the most important? Is coaching the most important? Is culture the most important? What is the thing that they should look for? Because clearly they thought they were getting a little a total package in Jimbo. They thought they were getting an offensive guru with the recruiting chops, and he had the recruiting chops. He wasn't really what I would consider an offensive guru, at least not when they hired him anymore. So what's the best way forward? Because there are programs where you hire a recruiter and figure everything else out later. There are programs where you hire the developer or the guy who can mold 3 stars into, serviceable guys. It's what is this program's identity to get, or what's its best path best path to getting to where it wants to be.
I've got an answer, but I'll let you go first.
You can't have somebody who's obviously A&M has tremendous recruiting resources,
right
with their NIL. So you need to have somebody who does have the ability to where if you juice them up with all the money, they can get you over the finish line in recruiting, right? Like if you're A&M, you got that kind of cheddar, you're going to be expecting top 5 classes for sure. So it can't be like hey, just the guy's like a super scheme guy, but like he can't recruit at all, unproven type of thing. Like you need somebody who at least has some track record of recruiting, like a little bit above weight level to when you do put the resources behind it. Like, okay, like there's a clear path forward for them to be able to compete in those high level recruits. I think you need somebody who's not an assistant right now, honestly, because I think A&M's got a lot to deal with, man. It tracks from your ability to just focus on the ball. So you need somebody who can kind of just save a thing and be like, hey, cut the check, shut the mouth. I'm running this ship, right? Now, granted, I think Jimbo had the chops to do that. He just didn't run the ship very well. But I do think he was able to kind of tell the boosters what to do for a little while. And I just like somebody culturally that get, I think, a track record of overachieving a little bit because you're going to have so much talent, right? Somebody a nice job, consistent track record of coaching. Like, what about like Kleiman? Not to just keep throwing names out there, but like a guy that has a good track record of winning.
There is a lot of passion, and like there are power players behind Kansas State football, and I swear they're not all members of the Snyder family. Though the Snyder family does extend pretty deep around that Kansas State football program. I think you need a politician. I think you need somebody who can like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind is a manager, somebody who's going to be able to manage people, somebody who's going to be able to weigh the competing interests of the boosters in the university, of the different power players within that booster community who might want different things and, want to direct funds in different directions. You cannot be inexperienced at speaking that language with those types of people. I think that would be the challenge if you try to sell me on Jeff Traylor, is that Jeff Traylor might have connections with all the high school coaches and he might know some of these guys, but these are different rooms that you're going to be moving in when it comes to trying to put in FaceTime and trying to, grant that one-on-one or grant that special relationship, that access, that the guys who cut the really big checks, the kinds of checks that get cut to get Jimbo out of town, to get you hired. You need to be able to move in those rooms. And maybe Jeff Traylor can. I mean, I don't want to say that he's not. I just know that the world that he operates in at UTSA and has worked in, in terms of being a head coach is not the same as what you have here at Texas A&M. Dan Lanning might be closer to it just because of the kind of resources you're talking about at Oregon, though it's a very different booster community. Perhaps his experience as a Georgia assistant comes in handy there. Well, I think the politician and being able to navigate that community and delegate, those are the things that I think are the most important qualities for Texas A&M's hire.
2 things on the Lanning and Norvell stuff. I think they both have really good support right now. Like Oregon and the Florida State NIL are doing really, really well. So it's not like you're going for places that aren't having any NIL to like A&M, which has a war chest, which A&M certainly does have a war chest. We saw it 2 years ago with that recruiting class. Also, the ability to like win 10 plus games consistently and allow your family with your young kids to live somewhere where you're already making 9 or 10 or 11 million, which certainly a lot of coaches will get raises off this. Right? There's something to be said for that. Like Oregon is killing it in recruiting right now. Oregon is going to go into the Big Ten with, I'm buying Oregon over Michigan, 4 or 5 years from now, I think. Like they're really, really killing it. As long as Phil Knight's around and doing the Mike Ilitch thing, where we're trying to win every single year, like Detroit Tigers reference there. I'm going to win a whole bunch of games every year because a lot of these rosters in the Big Ten just are not going to be competitive with what I have. That's not necessarily true if you go to A&M and you're in the SEC, right? Like Hugh in like
Bud's breaking up. I will say
on,
to echo his point with Lanning, like
and
I think Oregon as it enters
kind of the
Big
same
10,
thing with
you're breaking up, bud. We can't hear you.
How many coaches behind?
But I will just say, like, to echo what you're saying about Oregon, that's the thing with Lanning. Like, you look at the A&M job and you look at where you are. Oregon probably enters the Big 10 next year as like the third best team in the league, like with where they're currently stacked roster wise and what they've got coming in. Like, I'm not the third best team in the SEC at Texas A&M. I don't know if I'm the fourth or the fifth or the sixth at this point. So I don't think it makes a ton of sense for him to leave from that standpoint. Like, I think he's at a job where he's got an easier path to get where he wants to get than he would have at A&M, but maybe he wants that job. Maybe he thinks the profile, maybe the money, who knows? Norvell, I kind of feel the same way because, like, whether, like, if you're at Florida State right now, you're clearly the top dog in the ACC this year and probably for the next couple years because Clemson seems to be going in the wrong direction. I don't know what North Carolina's future really is with Mac Brown. So I don't know. I'm with you. I don't know how attractive A&M is. Like, I think a lot of these guys are going to use it for a raise and somebody decent will end up getting the job. I just don't know if it's going to be a situation like Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU. I don't know if you're going to be seeing a sitting head coach at like a quote unquote playoff contender blue blood type program leave for this job.
What about guys? I mean, Dan Mullen and Tom Herman. Would either of those be a
Mullen? You can't. I don't think A&M could hire Mullen based on how that went at Florida with the recruiting kind of stuff. Like, I feel like Arkansas or Mississippi State should definitely be calling Dan Mullen. I think Michigan State should be. I think a lot of programs that should be going after Dan Mullen. I don't think A&M would be a fit.
No, Dan Mullen, it's the same thing with the Kiffin thing. Like, I need to really believe that if I gave you the resources, you can recruit at that level. And I don't believe that with Kiffin, and I don't believe that with Mullen.
Yeah, and
you need
to be fair,
absolute killer and love the recruiting game at these top programs.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm just mentioning the coaches that are out of work right now. That if Texas A&M was going to make a hire and put it in place in time for the early signing period and be able to just try to like have them work on their shadow staff, you know, over the next couple weeks or so, Tom Herman, Dan Mullen.
Well, Herman's
Urban
at
Meyer.
FAU. He's not unemployed.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Tom Herman's at FAU. And this season hasn't gone well. Never mind.
Started well. It's going bad now. I will say, like, yeah, you just mentioned the name and we mentioned
they're not going to hire the failed Texas coach.
Yeah. We talked about all the things that you need to succeed at Texas A&M. Urban Meyer checks every single damn box and he is available. Like, I don't think it'll happen. I think Urban is serious when he says that he's done. But man, you kind of have to go, right? You have to just kind of check on that, don't you?
100%. Look, when Urban Meyer had an appearance on All Things Covered, the podcast that Bryant McFadden and Patrick Peterson host, I believe it was this summer, they had him ranking what he thought were the best jobs in college football. And he kind of did it off the top of his head. The ordinal numbers, it felt like there were like 7 ties in there. But what you heard from Urban Meyer going into this soliloquy of what he thought were the best jobs in college football and trying to rank them on the fly, he just picked regional areas where there's talent. Like he just went through and he was like, Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Florida State. I mean, he just sort of like he circled his way around. And I think about that now when I consider how Urban Meyer might look at the opportunity. If he's somebody that is so driven in terms of the way that he views the hierarchy of college football jobs in terms of how close you are to talent, hell yes. If you're Urban Meyer, you sniff it and you look at it because you're going to be able to wrap your, let me see if I can get this. Like, you know, when you got the big title ring that when you slap your hand on the desk, it's going to like make a not only just a thud, but a little bit of a little extra clink. Like when Urban Meyer can put those 3 national title rings and wrap them on the desk, you're going to shut your mouth. Like I think that he could potentially make first of all, it would be amazing for content. Would love it. But I think he does check up a lot of boxes, as you said.
You know who else would be amazing for content?
Jim Harbaugh?
No. Gonna get the Louis. He's gonna fill it back up, and he's gonna head on down to College Station.
Go hire Dion. I want A&M to hire Dion.
No, shout out to Ryan Nanny, friend of the program. I believe he said on Twitter, just get ready for the news cycle to include the headline: Deion Sanders turns down Texas A&M.
I definitely see that being floated out there.
In terms of a guy who comes in and just totally ignores your traditions and starts all his own, like Dion dismantling all the other stuff that A&M does, like no showing midnight yell and all this.
He's already got the cowboy hat
content, yeah,
and got the hat. So, just saying,
yeah. No, what'll happen is there'll be a phone call, and it might just be on background, but then magically it's going to leak that Dion talked to Texas A&M. Just click, cha-ching.
Does Meyer have Jimbo vibes, like based on how it ended at Ohio State?
No, because it ended the same way at Florida, and then he went to Ohio State and won a national title. I think he just burns out. Like I think he comes in hot as hell for the first 3 years, and then you get to year 4, and it just kind of the grind starts getting to him. Now maybe. How old is he now? Maybe that cycle goes quicker
60.
now. Yeah, because it's maybe he just doesn't have the kind of fervor that he once had, but also maybe I don't know. Again, I think he's serious when he says he's not interested in coming back, but it's also maybe he's more available to delegate more and not make it matter as much. Which, if that's the case, maybe he's not the right hire.
ESPN's Pete Thamel, he said early list of potential names for Texas A&M, knowing money is no object. Lane Kiffin, we talked about him. Mike Elko, talked about him. Mike Norvell, Dan Lanning, Jeff Traylor, Chris Kleiman, Bud, you mentioned that one. Kalen DeBoer from Washington. I think that probably falls under the same, he's a really good coach. I don't think anybody would be shocked. That's more of a Kalen DeBoer question, where it goes back to, would you want to leave that job? You're on your way to the Big Ten. Are you looking to uproot? Do you think Texas A&M is the right place for you and your family? That feels personal. But there's another name on this list, gentlemen, and we'll hit it before we get out of here. Cliff Kingsbury.
No. Come on. Be serious. No. Really? Why would you hire Cliff Kingsbury if you're A&M?
He put Cliff on the list?
Yeah.
Because the rest of those guys have a real pattern to them in my head. But wow, Cliff. Okay.
And it's an early list of potential names, according to ESPN's Pete Thamel. So,
who's his agent?
Is it? No, Cliff's his own agent right now. I don't know. That's probably not true. But anybody, if I was his agent, I wouldn't have. I don't know if I would have been like, yeah, man, just go to Thailand. No big deal. Come back whenever you want. I feel like that guy's representing himself at this point. Cliff Kingsbury, for those.
Can you imagine, but seriously though, can you imagine the reaction of A&M fans if they hire Cliff Kingsbury? Like they hire the guy who couldn't win at Texas Tech, and now he's going to come win at Texas A&M. Like, come on.
Saban couldn't win at Michigan State.
Yeah, I mean, he was the offensive coordinator for Johnny Football. Like, that's what you're pitching it as. Like, you show the Johnny Football highlights and that insane ride and the clips of Kingsbury on the sideline. Yeah, that is what you sell as the Cliff Kingsbury hire is to.
But are you buying as a Texas A&M fan if that's what they're selling you? Like, are you talking yourself into, oh, this is the one?
So Thamel did not have Urban Meyer on the list?
Correct.
Thamel knows Urban really well, right? And has reported on Urban a lot. Like, if Urban's not on Thamel's early list, just even like the wildly speculative throw it out there list, maybe Urban is really serious about not getting back in. Like I'm choosing to read into that.
Yeah, I think Urban is serious. Yeah.
Your internet just got so crispy.
Look at that.
It's checkout time at the hotel. There's a lot less Wi-Fi being taken up.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to use this opportunity, like since we're all going to be traveling a little more, to see if I can get a hotspot.
Yeah.
Like a work hot. This could be a good example. Jordan, clip this.
for our
I need the
bosses.
hotspot. Yeah, exactly.